When I was 13, I attended my first and last year at Pinewood Summer Camp, a traditional camp for teens aged 13 to 16. The camp had a dark history involving a former cafeteria worker, Miss Crawford, who had mysteriously died on the grounds. One sleepless night, I tossed and turned in my cot while everyone else was fast asleep. The moonlight poured into the room through every window. Feeling restless, I sat up and rubbed my eyes. That's when I noticed the light from the window across from me was blocked by something. It was the silhouette of an older woman wearing a red cap. I was puzzled and slightly unnerved, especially when I realized she was staring directly at me, her eyes locked onto mine. Terrified, I turned on my side and hid under the covers. After a minute, I dared to look back at the window, but she was gone. Breathing a sigh of relief, I glanced at the window above my cot, just 3 feet away. There she was again, the same woman in the red cap, peering down at me. I covered myself with the blanket, cowering in fear until I eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I told one of the camp supervisors about the woman I saw. He exchanged uneasy looks with 2 women in the office. One of them said, "That sounds exactly like Miss Crawford." My heart skipped a beat. To this day, I don't know if what I saw was real, a figment of my imagination, or perhaps the ghost of Miss Crawford herself. I'll never forget that eerie night at Pinewood Summer Camp. Camp was supposed to be fun, but me and Mike were stuck like glue. Other kids made friends fast, but we were left out. Luckily, Mike, a short, bouncy kid with a Yankees hat that never left his head, started talking to me. He seemed super cool then, but now I bet he's one of those troublemakers in high school. On the first day's walk around, we saw this spooky bunkhouse boarded up and dark. It looked like nobody used it in ages. We asked a counselor, new to the job, and he didn't even know what it was for. All he knew was it hadn't been used for years. On the last night of camp, everyone was getting ready for bed. Mike whispered a secret plan to me. He wanted to sneak into the creepy bunkhouse for fun and see what was inside. I wanted to seem brave, so I said yes even though I was scared. When everyone was asleep, we snuck out of our bunk. Our hearts were thumping like crazy. We reached the bunkhouse and found the front door blocked with boards. But lucky for us, one window was already broken open a little. We climbed through, tight squeeze. Inside, it was dark and cold. We couldn't see anything, so we felt our way around with our hands out in front. We kept bumping into bunk beds, me and Mike both. I stopped to listen for Mike, and that's when I heard it. A bouncing sound on one of the beds getting closer to me. I thought it was Mike fooling around, so I yelled at him. But Mike's voice came from the other side of the room. We were both scared. It wasn't either of us making that noise. It was pitch black, and we were in a creepy building that hadn't been used in ages. All we could hear was that bouncing sound getting faster and louder. We freaked out and scrambled for the window we came in through. It was tiny, and it took forever to get out. While I was waiting for Mike, the bouncing stopped suddenly. Then there was a loud thump. Whoever was on that bed must have jumped off. I scrambled out the window and fell to the ground. Before I could get up, something grabbed my ankle. It tried to pull me back in, but I kicked and pulled myself free. We ran back to our bunk and locked the door. We thought about telling the counselors, but we were scared of getting in trouble. In 2015, I attended a summer camp called Woodland Retreat, and luckily my best friend Jason was coming with me, so I wouldn't be there without knowing anyone. The camp lasted for 2 weeks and was the classic setting you'd expect to see in old summer camp horror movies like Sleepaway Camp. There were 2 large cabins where the boys and girls slept respectively. There was also a main lodge building that housed the activity center, dining hall, and other amenities with various smaller buildings scattered throughout the camp. Jason and I stayed up later than all the other kids because we were playing on our Nintendo Switches together. It was the deep hours of the night, past 2 a.m., and we were still engrossed in our games. That's when the door to the cabin creaked open. Panicking, We both shoved our switches under our pillows and pretended to be asleep. Footsteps moved across the room, from Jason's bed over to mine. Then the footsteps stopped beside my bed, and for a brief moment, I felt the eerie sensation of someone's breath on my neck. The footsteps then retreated, and the door quietly closed. I looked over at Jason and whispered, "That was scary." Someone was breathing down my neck. We decided to go back to playing on our switches with the screen brightness turned all the way down. That's when I received a text message on my phone that read, "Why are you two still up?" Those of us with cell phones were given a list of phone numbers of the camp counselors for emergencies. But this number wasn't on that list. I texted back, "Who is this?" but got no response. I told Jason, who didn't have a cell phone, and he was just as freaked out as I was. We assumed it had to be a counselor, so we continued playing. Suddenly, we heard the back door of the cabin open. We looked at each other and quickly hit our switches again. This time, there were no footsteps. My phone vibrated again. It was another message from the same number. "It's Counselor Mike. Come outside to the back of the cabin. I need to talk to you." I told Jason, and he immediately said it sounded too suspicious. We started to wonder if this Mike was the person who had just opened the back door. No one was in sight, so I walked down the hall a bit more. Jason was not happy about it. As I got closer to the back screen door, I noticed a small alcove in the wall. In that little nook, I saw someone hiding. Getting closer, I realized it wasn't a camp counselor, but an old, creepy-looking man about my height. I sprinted back to my bed, yelling for help and waking everyone up. A camp counselor rushed in through the front door, and I frantically explained what had happened. The counselors searched the entire camp and the surrounding forest for anyone matching the description I gave. It was a vast area, so finding someone would be difficult. To this day, it still doesn't make sense how that man got my phone number. My best guess is that he somehow found the list of phone numbers the counselors had made. But how did he know who I was? I still dream about this experience every now and then. This is my story. If you like my stories, please subscribe and like.